War doesn't make anyone rich. That's what they say. Defense is for peace. War hurts everyone equally. Nobody profits from conflict. But what if that's never been true? Because since the dawn of empires, from Roman legions to drone swarms, war has burned $400 trillion in value and still made the rich richer. Let's expose how this ancient pattern, war as profit, still shapes the world today. Watch closely. Every year, the world spends $2.7 trillion on war. That's more than what the world spends on food, more than on education, more than what it would take, by far, to end world hunger. Over 5,000 years of conflict, war hasn't just taken lives, it's vaporized economies. An estimated $400 trillion in global wealth has been erased by war. Burned, bombed, smeared across empires, kingdoms, republics, democracies. And yet, every time, someone profits. This isn't chaos, it's not random, it's a business model. Let's break the loop. It always begins the same way. A threat, a headline, a whisper of war. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. But the reaction is always predictable. Governments scramble. Defense budgets surge overnight. Emergency funds get passed. No debate, no delay. Then the floodgates open. Defense contractors win billion-dollar deals, profits spike, dividends explode, shareholders toast with champagne while cities smolder. Then come the lobbyists. 1,200 of them in the United States alone. More than 2 for every member of Congress. Lockheed Martin alone pulled in $75 billion in Pentagon contracts. Raytheon, $28 billion. Anduril, a startup, got a $1.5 billion valuation before even delivering a single battlefield unit. Rheinmetall's stock price, up 86% after new Ukraine war deals. Behind every budget increase, a shadow army ensures the cycle repeats. Lobbyists who write the policy, consultants who blur the lines like the tanks that push forward, just enough to sign the next check. And when the money runs dry, another threat emerges, a drone strike, a false flag, a border skirmish. The loop begins again. This isn't a bug in the system, it is the system. A $1 trillion feedback loop that prints fear and converts it into profit. And the longer it spins, the harder it is to stop. But who were the first to profit from this machine? Rewind the clock. Before defense contractors and lobbyists, there were kings and crusaders. War wasn't just strategy, it was a business model even then. In ancient Rome, the empire spent nearly a quarter of its GDP feeding legions, forging weapons, and expanding borders. That wasn't a security measure, it was an investment. In medieval Europe, serfs surrendered up to 80% of their harvest to fund noble wars. Plague or no plague, the tax came first. And behind it all, quiet profiteers. Bankers like the Fuggers funded kings and took collateral in land, mines, and influence. Fast forward to today, the castles are now glass towers, the swords have become satellite guide drones, and the conquest? Legal, scalable, shareholder approved. One thing never changed. War makes fortunes. The battlefield moved, but the profits stayed with the few. And if this sounds insane already, wait until you see what happens when wars are run like startups. Click like if you're ready to follow the money trail, because in today's world, war doesn't just break nations, it builds portfolios. Let's talk about today. While cities burn and civilians run for cover, defense stocks soar high. Israel versus Iran, Russia versus Ukraine, thousands of lives lost, entire cities reduced to dust. But behind that smoke, a very different kind of explosion. Defense contractors quietly break revenue records, oil giants cash in on price spikes, and arms sales surge across borders, even to the very regions fanning the flames. Look at Ukraine, $150 billion in infrastructure wiped out. Rheinmetall's stock shot up 86% in 1 year. And American defense giants got $40 billion in new contracts, mostly for Lockheed and Raytheon. Israel and Iran's standoff? Boeing sales to Israel spiked after the strikes, and Rafael, another defense firm, saw orders flood in from all over the world. Even oil companies cash in. Middle East chaos sends crude prices soaring, and big oil pockets an extra $200 million a day when conflict peaks. That's the uncomfortable truth. War destroys lives, but for some, it's the ultimate profit rally. And don't assume it's accidental. The incentives are clear, the playbook is old, and the next chapter already being written. But modern war isn't just missiles and markets anymore. It's turning into something even bigger. A trillion-dollar machine that doesn't just kill, it evolves. How much have we lost to war? Not just in missiles, not just in lives, but in wealth gone forever. Ancient empires, $10 to $50 trillion, lost to conquest and collapse. Medieval kingdoms, crusades, plagues, burned cities, another 20 to 60 trillion vanished. Early modern era, colonial wars, revolutions, endless European campaigns, 30 to 70 trillion more. Industrial age, new empires, global conflicts, 40 to 80 trillion gone. Modern age, 2 world wars and the Cold War burned through 80 to 100 trillion more. And since then, Iraq, Afghanistan, failed reconstructions, another 10 to 20 trillion still rising. Altogether, a conservative total puts the damage near 200 trillion. A broader estimate, over 400 trillion lost to war. And where did all that wealth go? It wasn't lost, it was relocated. So the real question is, who benefited? Because for every blast, there's a bonus. This is who cashes in. It not just defense giants, but defense contractors, logistics and construction, private security, banks, post-war consultants, and oil barons. While bombs fall, contracts fly. While wages shrink, dividends explode. And in the fog of war, something extraordinary happens. Reconstruction begins, but not for the survivors, for the architects. Every bomb that drops creates a contract to rebuild. Every hospital shelled is a future line item. Every ruined road, an invoice. War becomes the launch pad. Destruction becomes the business model. Private jets land as the dust rises. The people run for safety, while profits run higher. Halliburton made nearly $40 billion during the Iraq War alone. Blackwater, the private military firm, raked in over $250 million from Iraq and Afghanistan contracts. Lockheed Martin, $400 billion in post-9/11 contracts. Bechtel operates in 160 war-impacted countries, building, rebuilding, profiting. And banks? They finance both ends, war bonds to fund the fight, then reconstruction loans to fix what broke. All engineered to be too big to question. But if war enriches the few, who really pays the price? Because for every billionaire built in boardrooms, millions are drafted into battlefields. Who fights the wars? Not the ones making the decisions, not the ones catching the dividends. Nearly 3/4 of Vietnam combat troops came from working class or lower income families. About 80% were from those backgrounds. In everyday United States service today, over 60% of enlistees come from middle to working class neighborhoods. Most Civil War soldiers were poor, they didn't own slaves, but fought and died for others who did. In World War I, wealthy young men bought exemptions from the draft, while the less fortunate went to the trenches. Today, officers often come from Ivy League or elite schools via ROTC or academies, while enlisted ranks are mostly high school graduates, with no safety nets and few options. For the rich, war is an investment. For the poor, it's a draft notice, a job application with body armor. They call it service, but the battlefield doesn't pay in equity. There's no dividend for lost limbs, no pension for PTSD. Generals retire into boardrooms, soldiers retire into debt. Still think this is just about patriotism? And as the cycle repeats, the battlefield is evolving. Because in the next war, it won't just be boots on the ground. It'll be AI. It'll be autonomous. And it won't knock before it enters your airspace. The wars of tomorrow aren't on the horizon. They are already under contract. AI doesn't need sleep. It doesn't need permission, and it never asks questions. Private firms are designing autonomous weapons that can make kill decisions without a single human in the loop. Confirmed, US defense firm successfully tests lethal autonomous drone prototype. Defense One, 2024. Like Palantir has landed over $1 billion from the Pentagon to power battlefield intelligence with AI. Anduril raised $1.5 billion to automate border security with smart surveillance and drones. Elbit Systems secured $300 million to deploy drone swarms for next-generation warfare. Edge Group in the United Arab Emirates is quietly exporting AI targeting tech to regimes worldwide. In the endgame, it's not just AI armies, it's survival for the select few. $45 million survival condo sells out in 72 hours. Peter Thiel's New Zealand bunker spotted via satellite. Silicon Valley billionaires buy military-grade fortresses. When the sky goes black, they're not waiting for the government. They're sealing the hatch. In this game, the jackpot isn't winning the war, it's surviving what comes after. What if you're not on the list? Because here's the twist, you're not invited. The AI arms race is here, but unless you wear a badge of billion-dollar equity, you're just another data point in the war to come. Global defense budgets are ballooning, but not for troops, not for tanks, not for body armor. The next war, it'll be fought in code, not trenches. $6 trillion projected global defense budget by 2035. $1 trillion earmarked for nuclear AI modernization. $300 billion plus already deployed by the US, China, and Israel for autonomous warfare. This isn't about holding land, it's about dominating cyberspace. Data is the new terrain, algorithms are the new artillery. And who's leading the charge? Not nations, not generals, but billion-dollar private firms who move faster than governments ever could. Palantir, Anduril, Skydio, SpaceX's Starshield, and Edge Group. They build the machines of tomorrow and the bunkers for when it all burns down. Private space programs, underground sanctuaries, $100 million doomsday condos, buried deeper than most subway tunnels. One US bunker firm got calls from 7 billionaires in 7 days, after just one war scare. While the world burns, they dig deeper. But here's the cruel paradox. The more they plan for disaster, the more certain it becomes. Let's be honest, some of the greatest breakthroughs in history came from war. GPS guiding your morning commute, the internet powering everything from business to dating, emergency trauma surgery developed on battlefields, rocket technology sending humans to space, first designed to deliver bombs. World War II gave birth to computers. DARPA's war projects became Google Maps and Siri. That's the paradox. War powers innovation, but the cost isn't innovation. The tech that connects and saves lives was built on budgets designed to take them. Just because something gives us progress doesn't mean we should accept the price. 400 trillion, that's not just bombs and bullets. It's time, progress, and generations of wealth vaporized. In Ukraine alone, over $1 trillion in infrastructure has been lost. Syria's economy has collapsed. Its GDP has dropped by 80% since 2011. And in World War II, the devastation cost more than $10 trillion across Europe and Asia. Entire factories reduced to rubble. Fields and crops burned to the ground. Millions of skilled workers disappeared or displaced. Entire towns erased from the maps. Even countries that don't fight pay the price. A war next door can sink your economy. Studies show neighbors of war zones see their GDP drop by 10 to 15% just from being close. Did you know that a 2016 study revealed something almost unbelievable? World War I cost France 5 times more than the total value of every company, every factory, and every industry in the country. It nearly wiped out France's entire financial system. And still, defense firms posted record earnings that year. So if this system bleeds nations dry, if it destroys futures, if it benefits the few while bankrupting the many, why hasn't it stopped? Because the incentives are permanent. Defense contractors don't just build missiles, they build relationships, fund campaigns, and shape policy. Donations flow in, budgets grow, contracts get signed, stock prices soar, war pays again and again. Retired generals become boardroom executives, lobbyists become legislators, and the door between Congress and the Pentagon, it never really closes. This is how the war machine feeds itself. Fear, funding, contracts, profit, influence, and back to fear. War creates urgency. Urgency creates blank checks. Blank checks create billion-dollar fortunes. This isn't a flaw in the system, this is the system. And it isn't built to stop war, it's built to make war endlessly profitable. So now that you see how it works, where do you stand? The next war might not be televised, it might be coded, or traded, or triggered by a single drone. Your battlefield is this moment, and your weapon is awareness. So, now that you've seen the money trail, what do you think could actually break this cycle?